My name is Neil Killian. Our group is the Climate and Energy Realists Queensland, and our two founding principles are the Principle 1 and Principle 2. There should be no energy subsidies given. All systems for energy should be on the free market basis. Okay, we agree with that? Yes. Scrap all the subsidies. In fact, use that as a slogan. Scrap the subsidies. It's always got to be 3 words long, isn't it? Okay, the first slide that I wanted to show you concerns where all this hype comes from on the other side. You know, the runaway global warming, heating, melting, and going to hell in a handbasket. In fact, I think according to Guterres, we're already in hell in his latest statement. All of this comes from a fantasy land of computer modelling. It doesn't come from reality. We are the realists. It comes from computer modelling. Now, the slide I'm going to show you will compare the actual results from what's been going on with global average temperature from, say, the year 1979, 1980 to present. Okay, so about 45 years. It's a fair length of time. Now, I'm going to use what is the recognised system for measuring global average temperature, and that is a mid-troposphere satellite system which orbits the Earth, and the data is collected by two of our prominent scientists, Dr. Roy Spencer and Dr. John Christie, who is a fellow Aussie, and they operate out of the University of Alabama at Huntsville, so you get the famous UAH 8.5 graph. They present changes to the global average temperature on a monthly basis. So we're able to track those over that 45-year period. You see a little bit of warming, not huge, a little bit, nothing to get excited about. And most recently, and probably alarmingly to our friends who have to double down on their hype, a little bit of cooling. If we've come off the hottest temperature in some of 400,000 years by at least half a degree. Now, I'm about to put up here for you a graph, and this is courtesy of Roy Spencer's work, and I'd love to get him on Zoom one day to one of our meetings. So, can you do that? You've done it. Okay, so there you see wonderful work. There you see reality. You see it just bumping along, not very spectacular. That's what's really going on. And now you see this absolute mess. It runs on average between 2 and 4 times as hot as what's really being observed.
What's that line in the middle there?
Is that the average?
Average.
Well,
that line in the middle is the average of all those models.
it's something else to me.
Yeah, it looks like, you know, wires out of a circuit box or something. Okay, so here's Roy Spencer, and he says the day of reckoning has arrived, and you can only call it what it is. It's an epic fail. That's reality. You'll all get a copy of that, probably next week, because I'm away this week. And you can all show that to people, use it as a talking point. If we use A.D. Patterson's model as well, use it as a talking point. That's what we're dealing with. That's how ridiculous it is. So the second one I'm going to show you is just a quick summary of a Grok 3 AI analysis of the climate data. So this sort of information and more was fed into a Grok 3. Now that's the one that operates via X, Musk, so we can have more reliance on that than we can with others. I've tried it myself on an area unrelated to climate and energy, and I found it really well done. Super quick and giving me a very accurate appraisal of what I had, information contained in 4 separate books. So with the Grok A3, I'm just going to show you very quickly 2 sentences now, Jim, and you can see for yourselves what it concluded. So our analysis reveals wonderful thing for me too. The human CO2 emissions, constituting a mere 4% annual carbon cycle, are dwarfed by natural fluxes. That goes along with the statement that we've seen before, that the signal for climate change has not emerged beyond natural variability. It's simply confirming what we already know. And you can see the evidence at the bottom there, courtesy of Roy Spencer's figures. We conclude, therefore, that man-made global warming lacks empirical substantiation. It's all a fairy story, overshadowed by natural drivers such as temperature feedbacks, the sun, you know, the global ocean currents, everything we know, the El Nino effect, the lot. That's what controls the climate. It's a very, very complex thing indeed. Anyway, tonight we're going to talk about the future of coal. Subject dear to my heart. I love coal as a medium, as a way of building our modern society. We'll always need coal. We'll always need coal. Coal, not only do we produce the best black coal in the world, and every other country give their right arm to have our supplies, but of course coking coal makes steel, steel makes buildings, homes, appliances, you name it. There's no end to it. Even the renewables themselves, even these things that they're hyping and trying to sell to us, they need coal as well in the manufacture. So, and the second thing is that we don't just have a little bit of it. I've heard that argument that said, oh, well, we'll just wait till we run out and then we'll switch to nuclear. No, we've got oodles of this stuff, a ginormous amount for hundreds of years. In fact, Ian Plimer says thousands of years. So, you know, it's something that we'll always need. Now, I want to introduce Ben Beattie to you all. Ben is returning. He's been a speaker for us a year or so ago back at Burleigh, and we very much enjoyed his presentation then. Ben is supremely well qualified to talk on the current state of grid management and what's working to keep the lights on. And when Ben says there are quote-unquote major problems with renewables, you can bet your life that there's a multitude of sins that's hiding. He's also an excellent commentator. He's written articles for the Spectator magazine, and he runs his own blog, a copy of which, or the link for which I'll send to everyone and recommend that you have a listen, and following him on his blog called The Baseload. I listened to it a couple of times last week, and it's very, very well delivered. He's what I would call a conservative activist. There's not too many, so Ben, I'll give you that tag, because he doesn't mind taking on the opposition if they're willing to have a discussion or debate with him. He's only too willing to do that. So I'd like you all to give Ben a warm welcome on behalf of our group.
I think we're all sorted out now. Yeah, my name's Ben. I'm an engineer, and I've got some photos in a second to prove it. My children, I threatened them as they got into high school and said, I'm an engineer, so I'm going to have to teach you guys longer division. Unfortunately, when they got there, the school system had changed, so I actually did have to teach them longer division. Anyway, and they're not very impressed with that. Here in my personal capacity, I'll take the tag as activist, absolutely. I think there's too few of us around. So, coal is the future, indeed. But I think my cheeky addition to that is it can be a game, because unless there's a change, there's a lot of forces aligned against coal. And tonight, what I wanted to do is sort of merge a couple of other presentations I've done before. So I've done a couple of these talking about, and I get lost in the graphs and the data. So there is going to be a few charts tonight, but we'll skip through them and then there can be a Q&A afterwards. We can go through any other questions you want to go through. So, there's me, various phases of my life and my career. That's one of the first ones. And I haven't changed too much, hopefully. We'll see what happens. I have a gas career as well, that's kind of part of it at the moment. But yeah, power stations around the world, gas, some geothermal, Loy Yang down in the background there, around the place. So yeah, plenty of diesel as well. Some big ones here at Ranger, uranium mine. Power stations are not often in the middle of the suburbs. They don't want them in the middle of the suburbs, but so you have to go to far ends of the planet to go and see them. But they're good, they're an amazing machine. So, we're in this catch-22. We have a situation where policy is making baseload generators not economic. And that's a reality, and we'll go through some of that tonight before we get too bogged into it. But baseload makes a cheaper system, and this is the catch-22. So you'll hear, the most common phrase you'll hear from the politicians and the activists is that we need to build more renewables because it's the cheapest new generation. Now on its own, that's entirely correct, but none of us have an extension lead plugged into a solar farm or a wind farm. There's a lot of other things going on, and tonight we'll talk about some of that stuff. So I don't want to overwhelm you guys with, because when you're talking about the electricity system, you could literally do it for days and weeks. You could probably do a PhD thesis on it, but we're not here tonight to get further education. I know I've done plenty of that, and I'm sure most of you guys are sick of that too. So really, I'm just going to present you some maybe talking points, like Neil mentioned at the start. Just some ways to visualise and talk to people about it, because I was at a 21st birthday party for some friends on Saturday night. I end up, as I often do, talking about energy, and it is a difficult topic to get through. So let's see how we go. The ABC doesn't help, to be honest, and you guys are probably aware of that. This is one of their more recent articles. So Daniel Mercer is one of their primary journalists. Alex and Tim, when you click on their names in the link, you can see that they're just sort of graphics guys and writers. None of them have ever been to a power station, I suspect. So we've got these Mr. Men characters, and really all it is, this whole 3,500 words of ABC Times, but fancy graphics. It's an amazing website. The ABC doesn't help. I think I'll describe the ABC as living in a bit of a green bubble, right? And it's very hard to pierce that bubble. They have their beliefs, they have their experts that they go to, and that's kind of what they do. So they've got these Mr. Men characters. I guess I think most people don't remember Mr. Men characters, but I'm not that old. I do remember them, and they sort of use that. But the real thrust of this article comes in the bottom 20% of it, where it's just an attack piece on nuclear, because they don't like nuclear because it threatens renewables. And this is the problem with nuclear and coal. Market share is the problem, which is forced into us by subsidy. So here we can see, this is from that ABC website, and I took this because it's a great explainer of what's going on. So all these things are happening at the same time, and you can see coal at the top, and this is going across days, maybe a week, and during the day the solar comes up and the coal backs out. And this is the loss of market share problem that we have. Wind, sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. And you can see that generally coal's filling that gap. You've got some stuff through interconnectors here in the purple from other states, tiny bit of battery, tiny bit of gas, a little bit of hydro, but this yellow one is the main problem, and most of that's rooftop solar.
Excuse me, you need a line for the cars then.
Yeah, your EVs, the mythical EVs. Well, they're not going so well at the moment, are they? I think half the lefties are upset at Tesla because of Elon aligning with Trump, and so they've stopped buying them. They'd rather buy a Chinese EV, Explain that. So market share with coal and with nuclear, to be honest, is the problem. And we can go through the numbers a little bit more. here is all those charts sort of put together into one visualization. So this is open on electricity. Probably the best thing Simon Holmes and Court has ever done is fund this website, which you can click on and look at what's going on in any state, at any time, even back in history, download the data, you can do all sorts of cool stuff with it. It shows you the price, and you can see the different colours there. So I recommend checking that out at any time. You can even open it up on your phone. It's not an app, it's just a website. A plug for Coal Australia as we go through. So Coal Australia got some consultants who are knowledgeable about the industry that they're talking about. This is the coal industry, and RK here have done a report, and then Coal Australia have submitted that to CSIRO and AMO as a challenge or a criticism of Gen Cost. And so here's one of the things you're missing. If you're not familiar with what Gen Cost is, it's the cost report done by CSIRO to prop up the Australian Energy Market Operators, AMO's integrated system plan, which is the government's plan. Chris Bowen's 82% plan. That's what it is. So they tip the scales against coal wherever they can, and this is the CSIRO does, and this is a correction, if you like. And I recommend these slides will go out afterwards via Neil, if you're so kind, and the links are in there. You can grab it. So this is the most basic calculation. Dollars earned by a generator, and you've got dollars per megawatt hour, and you times it by how much megawatt hours they produce, and you're just left with dollars. This is the market share problem. Not enough megawatt hours. If you need to make the same amount of money, this has to get higher, right? And this is why prices are going up, because with rooftop solar not having any real connection to the market, what it does is steals market share from everything else on the system, including wind and utility solar farms. So this is a calculation to keep in mind. Dollars per megawatt hour times megawatt hours is just dollars. And at the end of the day, the generators are just interested in dollars. They're not there for public service. They don't care if our lights go on and off. They just need to make money for their shareholders. And some of it is Queensland taxpayers, other shareholders. So here's a couple of graphs. This is a net present value that I've done up using 2024 data. Coal can be cheap if it has enough market share. At $60 a megawatt hour, if you have all the megawatt hours, the blue line, supplied by coal, you can pay off that plant in 18 years. In 18 years, you'll be net positive. That's not bad for a 50-year asset, right? But if you take the current situation where you've got rooftop solar and all the other generators, if you spend nearly $2 billion building a coal-fired power station, a 700 megawatt, you won't even get to positive in 49 years. So you wouldn't do it, right? This is the problem. But if the prices go up, you don't need as much market share. Remember the previous slide? This is market share, this is price. If you have a higher price, you don't need as much market share, you can make your money back sooner. So don't be fooled by what's happening at the moment. The 2024 average price, I think, was about $112 a megawatt hour, which is pretty scary considering Angus Taylor said a few years ago he was trying to get it to 70. That was one of his election promises, I think, back in the day. So yeah, $110 a megawatt hour, you don't need as much market share. They're all making lots of money. Don't let that fool you. Some of them have higher costs than others, but there's a lot of money going into generation in this country through the high wholesale price. So when I see a CEO, I'll take Jeff Dimmery out, CEO of Alinta. He did a pretty good press club speech at the end of last year. He definitely got stuck into people and said, renewables isn't going to do it. You need baseload. And then they don't talk to him anymore.
Can I ask a crazy question? Can you explain what a megawatt hour is?
Yes, I can. So if you have a generator, it doesn't matter what type of generator it is, if it's putting electrons into the grid. If it generates 1 megawatt for 1 hour, that's a megawatt hour. If it generates 1 megawatt for 2 hours, it's generating 2 megawatt hours. If it generates 1 megawatt for half an hour, That's half a megawatt hour. It's literally megawatts times hours.
Okay.
Yep. So it's the area under the curve. So your generators go up and down at any point in time, but over time, that output, that area under the curve, is the megawatt hours that is generated. Set on that, we'll talk about it more later. This is my main argument, actually. This is it. This is what I like to ask people. This is what I wish the ABC would ask Chris Bowen. This is what I want Laura Tingle and Sarah Ferguson and PK to get into. But PK almost did in 2023, which is backed off now. So I want to know which part of the bill, this whole thing here, is our supply chain. And we'll go through that in a bit more detail. Retail costs, environmental costs, network costs, wholesale costs. So you've got to make the stuff with a generator. You've got to move it to your customers. Your customers have to buy it through your retailers, and your retailers have other costs put on them as well. So which one of those components do renewables act to make cheaper? And which one of those components do renewables act to make more? Because at the end of the day, you would have a valid argument if you said, well, renewables are going to reduce wholesale costs so far that those cost reductions will be more than any of the other cost increases, therefore your total bill will be less. That's the only argument they have, because plainly building 10,000 kilometres of transmission line is not going to reduce network costs. Plainly, retail costs are not going to change because you've got more renewables. Environmental costs are not going to change because you've got more renewables. Will wholesale costs reduce? Well, no, they haven't. And so this is the way to kill the argument, in my opinion, which is also why the ABC won't ask the questions. The cost to generate electricity is only between 30 and 40%, and it's always been that way. Yeah. The whole lot is expanding, so think of that whole lot stretching out and getting more expensive, but the proportional amounts are about the same. And this is not even my chart. This is from the Australian Energy Regulator. I didn't make it up. The networks include the transmission lines, which connect the states and the regions. It also includes the distribution, which is your poles and wires in your streets, underground cables, substations, transformers, things like that, your pillars. The distribution costs in your suburbs are about 4 to 5 times what the transmission costs are, because there's so much more of it. There's just a lot more. There's about 80 something billion at the moment is in the distribution, 20 something billion in your transmission. But we'll talk about the overall costs in a minute, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So yeah, the supply chain. The supply chain argument is where it has to go, and you'll hear people refer to it as total system cost. Total system cost. How much are we spending on the system? Because the only people paying the bill are the people using electricity, which is us and businesses. The network companies don't pay the bill. It all comes back to us as customers, right? So this is another representation of that supply chain. This is another graphic. This is from the Australian Energy Market Commission, this one. So you've got a wholesale market and a retail market. Your wholesale includes generating, transmission and distribution, your retailers and your consumers, and we're down here at the end. We don't have any impact on any of that stuff. We can't change any of it, right? The only thing we can change is which retailer we go to or how much we consume, or if we buy solar, things like that. So this is, and the flip side of the question is, how does coal, gas, hydro and nuclear affect the supply chain? Because they all have an effect, right? And you can see, you can probably step ahead in your mind and think about where we're going to go with this presentation. First chart of the night, here we go. This is, the blue bars is nameplate capacity of all the generators installed in the national electricity market, which excludes Northern Territory and excludes Western Australia, right? It's just the East Coast and South Australia and Tasmania. The blue bars is capacity in megawatts. So here we've got 20,000 megawatts, 30,000 megawatts, etc. And you can see that over time we get more stuff installed. Some years, a few things come out, maybe in here, and then we build some more. This includes coal, gas, wind, solar, batteries, hydro. That's about it, isn't it? Geothermal, if we had any biomass. Everything you can think of is in that, except rooftop solar. There's no rooftop solar. The orange line is a representation of how much demand we see in the market at any time. You can see that in the start of the NEM, back here in 1998, it was around about 26,000 megawatts, roughly in there. Peaked at around about 35,000, and then it kind of has some seasonal yearly changes that muck around. It's not going up, which is the main part of that line. What is going up is the black line, which is the average price across the NEM at the wholesale level. So you can see it's up. It was up around the sort of 120 to 140, somewhere around there, going up and up and up. It was pretty stable for a few years, roughly 40 to 60, even down at sort of 30-ish, and then somewhere around the mid 2010s, 2015s or so, it started going up and up and up. Most people look at a supply-demand situation and say, well, if we've got a lot more supply for not much change in demand, the price should come down. We're seeing the opposite. And that is because the supply increases is not the same as what was back here. We built a couple of gas turbines here and there, nothing significant. We've built tens of gigawatts of wind and solar. That stuff is not there all the time. We know that. That's a basic premise, right? So this is the main thrust of that. So yeah, we built a lot more capacity and not much more demand, and yet that wholesale price keeps going up. Why is that? The point of this chart is to show, and this is all Australian energy regulated data, which is all available on the net, is that we're building a lot more supply, but the demand's not going up. So the price should come down.
What's the big dip there from 2019, 2020, K1?
Excellent observation. So what happened in 2020? COVID lockdowns, not much demand for gas and coal and oil, and we see very low gas prices. All the gas companies lost a heap of money that year. No one talks about that. They just talk about the profits or the taxes they don't actually pay. But
there was another dip in 2023 and 2024.
yeah, this
businesses going out of going with
So technically it should just have kept them going across the top if COVID that would happen.
yeah.
So it looks like now we're just paying the subsidies for the stupid renewable crap.
There's part of that in there. So the big dip here is that was COVID lockdowns related. So you had a global glut of coal and gas. No one wanted it. We had plenty. Prices went down. Everything went down. The next one over, then it came back up. The next one over here is probably related to gas prices, to be honest, and because the government has put some controls on gas prices around then as well. And it will continue to go on for a long time. I'm happy to be quoted saying this is a 30-year problem if we start now fixing it. This is the plan. Speaking of problems, I don't know if you guys have seen this chart before. This is pretty famous. This is probably AEMO's most famous chart. This is the integrated system plan from here's today, roughly 2024, and the bottom line there is out to 2050. So this is the extra capacity that they say needs to be installed to meet government targets. And you can see that actually that there's no, but the green bar here, the green bar's gas. It gets bigger. Isn't that interesting? This purple one, coordinated CER storage. So unless you're in the lingo, you don't really know what that is. That is home batteries, community energy resources. So look at there's more capacity of home batteries than there is of coal today. This is the plan that they're coming up with, right? This is how crazy it is. And it's not just you buy a battery or an EV and plug it in and do what you want with it. This is coordinated. The expectation is you sign that up to be controlled by a third party. You sign it up to the benefit of the grid. And this is also not going to happen because no one in this room is ever going to do that, right? Not unless there's a significant financial benefit, which then means it's not going to be cheaper for everyone else. This is the little convolutions we have to understand about these plans. And this is the network stuff over here. So you can see this is where the 10,000 kilometres comes in because it's all there. So this is what people are concerned about, and rightly so. And none of this is going to reduce costs for anybody. This is not output, this is just nameplate capacity.
Right.
This is just written on the tag.
Just written up.
And as far as I can tell,
In the last couple of months where the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow,
yeah, it's all batteries and gas.
that's all crap.
Yeah.
Right, thank you.
It also, that's a good point, thank you. It also doesn't pick up the fact that something built here in 2024 will have to be rebuilt again out there.
Yeah.
So this is not capacity built, it's just capacity that exists at that time.
It's not the plan, it's the dream.
You could say it's a dream, yes. So yeah, this is sincerely frightening to me as an engineer. I look at this and I think this is pretty colours and pretty pictures, but it's sort of primary school stuff. This is part of AMO's plan. This is from one of their spreadsheets. Take a look at the numbers up the side. So here we have 5 billion, 10 billion, 15 billion, 20 billion. The dark purple is new wind and solar. That's how much they're expecting to spend every year.
No way.
And this is right. That's crazy. That all adds up to 600 billion just in it's 380 billion worth of generators. Just on the generators. And then you've got the transmission, and then it doesn't even include all the batteries and stuff. So yeah, missing data. Yes, so wholesale is only some of the bill. There it is. This is New South Wales. It's about a year out of date, but it's not that different. So this is where we talked about before. The wholesale part is a small part ticking along there, and you've got all these other costs. Remember the stack? They all add up to that. So this is what happens. Although if you're in the Ausgrid, the essential area of New South Wales, you're paying a bit more than everyone else. Why are wholesale prices so high? So this is an interesting question. So this comes back to, can renewables do it? So the first part you need to understand is what drives wholesale prices. So here at the top we have, and again this is a chart I did last year using New South Wales data, so I thought I'd use it here. You can see that there is some correlation between Newcastle export coal price in orange and the wholesale price in blue. Like it sometimes doesn't. 2022 is obviously an anomaly there, the big spike. That's because coal generators, very few of them buy export fuel. They're all, if in the 70s and 80s and even the 90s and the 2000s in Queensland, if you build a coal-fired power station, you build it on top of its own mine. You don't want to compete for fuel, you want the cheapest fuel possible. You don't export that coal. Here in the bottom chart, wind is in green and solar is in yellow. So that's the percent output of the total grid. You can see it's up 2, 4, 6, 8, 10% of the total in New South Wales in those periods. As more wind and solar gets built, it adds to the grid, you can count its output. I challenge people to show me where the correlation is between more wind and solar and lower prices. Clearly it's not on this chart. That's why they don't show it. What there is a correlation is gas, which is when the ABC says, what's the OMP going to do about electricity prices? And I mentioned Ted O'Brien. His plan to implement a domestic reserve / price control on gas will have a material effect on wholesale prices. Gas companies won't like it, that's for sure. A lot of free market commentators won't like it. But yeah, whether you like it or not, it will have an impact on the prices if they control the price of gas. Now, back to this. We're going to change scenes from wholesale to networks. So this lovely small print with some highlight on it is out of the 2024 ISP supporting documentation. You might not be able to see it from back there. It's pretty big for me here, so I don't need my glasses on to read it. But we can see HumeLink, there's Sydney Ring, Hunter, there's New England Res, Project Marinus, Victoria to New South Wales Interconnected, VNI West, Gladstone, and Queensland Supergrid South, whatever that is. and there's some dates of completion, and there's some billion-dollar price tags in there. And we all know how a infrastructure project in Australia goes when you put $1 billion price tag on it. You might as well just times it by 10 and add a zero. That's the way it goes. So what I did, I took our handy old Excel over here, and I put the central price in this column. I put the low and the high factors, and then I multiplied them out and got a low and a high, depending on if it's 50% plus or minus 50%. And I've got a low and a high total price. Now, you might remember me before I mentioned that the total regulated asset base value of the transmission network is currently about 23 billion. Even on the low side, they're going to nearly double that. So whatever's in that price stack of the network costs, the transmission component is at least going to double. And it might even go from 20 something to 30 something if it all gets built. And that should worry us all, because this thing called the regulated asset base, so that is the poles and wires, the land cruisers, the people, the substations, all the stuff they need to operate and maintain the electricity networks at the high voltage and low voltage levels, is called the regulatory asset base. And the network companies earn a return on that, a regulated return, 7 to 8%. So they're incentivized to have more stuff. If they have more stuff, they get an 8% return of more stuff, so it's a bigger number, right? So this is the game. So when you see the integrated system plan from AEMO, and they say, oh, we've assessed all this and the network companies all agree, you go, yeah, of course they do. Yep, there you go, there's the transmission values of, this is in 2023, of the various states, New South Wales, Queensland, Victoria, South Australia, Tasmania. So all that's meant to go up by, a factor of 1.5 to 2, somewhere in there, which is not pretty if you're a consumer paying for it. All right. We've done wholesale, we've done networks, well, basically. AGL do a really interesting annual report. Freely available, they do it every year. Partly because I guess they're obliged to, because they're an ASX listed company. Origin also do one, but AGL's is the best. Because they put some handy numbers in this, like green compliance costs. And I just think of the accountants in there thinking, how can we get this information out there? How can we make it really obvious to people? Green compliance costs, that says it to me. They could have just called it environmental overhead, or hidden it with some bubble speak, some ABC bubble speak, but green compliance cost does it for me. So here we've got $34 per megawatt hour, up from $30 a megawatt hour the year before. So that's 3.5 cents a kilowatt hour on your bill. Remember the conversion? $100 a megawatt hour is 10 cents a kilowatt hour. The other interesting thing on here is this consumer solar cost. So when we reap the benefits of rooftop solar, as I do, because you'd be mad not to, someone else is paying. And that's the reality. The retailers paying your solar feed-in tariff is a cost for retailers. Okay, they have other things where that can offset it, but at its basic understanding of it, they pay you. That's a cost to them. And it goes up and down. The consumer solar cost there is $80 a megawatt hour, 8 cents a kilowatt hour. So between your rooftop solar and your green compliance costs, the AGL are paying 11 cents a kilowatt hour. Somebody's got to pay. That's just us at the end of the line, right? Remember the supply chain? Yeah. And I promised you I had a slide on this. There it is. $100 a megawatt hour, divided by 1,000 to get the kilowatt hours. And then $0.1 is 10 cents. All right. And this is what it's doing to retail electricity prices. This is done by the Cynvitties. Gavin Dufty, if you follow him on social media, he's a nice guy. I met him last year. We had a coffee in Brisbane. He was on holidays. But you can see that the average is up. Similar to the wholesale price. Like, remember the wholesale chart? The lots and lots of blue bars, more and more capacity, price followed the wholesale price. Well, the retail price is impacted by the wholesale price. It's impacted by the transmission costs. It's impacted by the green compliance costs. It's impacted by the solar consumer costs. and it all adds up into this, which is, basically increases. You can see some dips around there in 2020 when the wholesale prices bottomed out, and you can see long-term charts of the wholesale price averages. It was really low. You might have seen this one before. This is my argument. All right, so that's that one. And I do a podcast, the Baseload podcast, so check it out if you feel like you need to, if you're a podcast person. If not, you can get in touch with me by email. I think whatever people actually think of climate change and emissions and that fun side of it, the greater threat to me is poverty, energy poverty, insecurity, not being able to build anything, not being able to farm anything. So we talked about energy security. What about food security? What about timber security? You know, they banned logging in Victoria, so you've got to import timber. What impacts does that have on our natural thing? What if we can't make fertiliser here anymore using gas? You've got to import stuff, and then you have a biosecurity risk as well. So all these things need to come into effect.
So, say hi, everyone. Give them a round of applause.
Thank you very much for that, and thank you for the introduction. Yes, Coal Australia is unashamedly, as our name suggests, very proud, very forward-leaning when it comes to coal and what coal delivers for the country, what coal mining communities mean for the country, and importantly, the sort of prosperity that those coal mining communities and our members generate for this country. It's interesting seeing some of the rhetoric coming from groups like the Greens, Teals and others as they desperately try and drum up donations, talking about the coal lobby's tentacles getting hold of Canberra. If only that was the case, if only that was the real life scenario. When I do travel to Canberra, and I do, and I'm very proud to say that I do, because it's a democratically elected government and our members churn out bucket loads of taxes, and so we're entitled to have a view put forward. But our ask is very simple. When I go to Canberra, I'm not trailing the coat looking for bucket loads of money for this project or that scheme. Far from it. I'm basically campaigning for sensible policy settings that allow for our producer members to be able to continue to pay billions of dollars in royalties, billions of dollars in corporate tax, and employ thousands of Australians in very well-paid jobs while generating untold prosperity, and as you pointed out, the second largest export earner for the country. It's a very simple ask. That's hardly the shadowy dark arts of lobbying. It's a very simple ask. Basically, get out of the way and allow us to get on and do what we do in terms of generating prosperity. And I look at some of the rhetoric coming from various groups that, we should transition away from coal as an export. To what? To what? I mean, it's an absolute nonsense to imagine that an elected member of parliament can walk into the House and start spouting off these ideas that we just end gas or we end coal or we end some other extractive industry tomorrow, and we somehow click our fingers magically and we'll wake up the next morning with the world a much nicer place, a much friendlier place, a more prosperous place, and we'll have magically found some other export item that we've transitioned to. I mean, if anyone can believe that, it is complete and utter nonsense. The prosperity generated by coal mining communities and the producer companies behind them is something we can be very, very proud of. The amount of taxes that are paid, the expertise, the know-how, and not to mention, of course, many developing countries who are building their own economies off the back of coal-fired power in the way we did 100 years ago. That is a very important form of soft diplomacy, if you like, where we're helping those countries today get to where we are now. What's wrong with that? And of course, then you look at the Bowen Basin in Queensland, where half the world's metallurgical coal is sourced from. Well, no one's come up with a better idea in terms of the use of met coal as a feedstock for steel production. Whether it's Andrew Forrest or anyone else, they're all backing away from green steel at 1,000,000 miles an hour because they understand it is not technically and economically viable. And so metallurgical coal will remain a key part of the export mix for Australia for many years to come, as will thermal coal. And forget about the Australia Institute or various other groups that will do back of the envelope calculations to say, oh, well, this project's not viable or that project's not viable. Have a look at what our member companies are doing. Because guess what? They're risking shareholder capital. They're sticking their necks out based on where they see demand coming from. And the reality is, the demand continues to be there from our near neighbours, whether it be Japan, India, South Korea, China, any number of other countries, who are all continuing to demand thermal coal, and importantly, all continuing to demand metallurgical coal, not just for the next 2 or 3 years, but for decades to come. And so we have this strange debate playing out in the Hunter Valley at the moment that we should be seeking to shut down very profitable and successful mines well ahead of what is their active mine life, simply to satisfy some of the so-called transitioners who basically dress that up as a way of getting out of coal tomorrow. Well, we're not looking to do that. And the reality is, if we don't continue to produce coal, and if we don't continue to export coal, I will guarantee you, other countries will. And they will replace us and take our place in the market. Why should we give up that economic and competitive advantage to satisfy a noisy minority? And people say, oh, well, that's spoken, you know, they've elected a few teals who are all there on climate action, or the Greens are there on climate action. The Greens have moved so far away from environmental issues these days that I'm not sure even the likes of Bob Brown would know what they stand for. In terms of the teals, well, of course, you've got Simon Holmes Court madly demonising the coal sector as a way of generating donations. So I dread to imagine if he ran this out of existence tomorrow, what his clarion call would be to drive donations for the teals. He'd have to try and demonise some other sector. The happy news is that we don't plan on going away anytime soon. And whether it's the Coalition's plans for nuclear, or even whether it's the Labor Party's plans to transition as rapidly as we possibly can, the bleeding obvious remains that coal-fired power is still the cheapest, most stable and secure form of baseload power that can be generated in any developed economy anywhere in the world. And in New South Wales, we've seen the Eraring Power Station already extended in its lifespan once by the New South Wales government in a very sensible and pragmatic decision. And it won't shock me if in a year or so's time they announce they're extending it even further. Because the reality is the race to renewables is certainly not moving as quickly as the likes of Chris Bowen and others would have us believe. And if he thinks people are buying what he's selling, have a look at some of that industry polling that was released over the weekend. I mean, there we saw in seats like Werriwa, in Sydney southwest, Whitlam, south of Wollongong, and stretching across to Invercargill, Labor's in big trouble in both of those seats. And what was interesting is that 40% of voters there were saying that in their view, they viewed Chris Bowen as a drag on the Labor Party's vote. And certainly you speak to some within Labor, and they will all concede that, well, yes, it's sort of his way or the highway, and it's not terribly helpful. He wants to tell us that, well, with renewables, wind and solar and the sun and the wind don't send an invoice. But that just happily neglects the fact that there are huge infrastructure costs in harvesting that. The clouds don't send an invoice either, but we all get a water bill on a very regular basis. And why does that happen? Because we've got enormous infrastructure in place to harvest rainwater when it falls. But of course, he ignores all of that. Thankfully, we're not trying to build a second water infrastructure network from scratch. But for some reason, when it comes to electricity generation, we do want to build a brand new network from scratch. And there are billions and billions of dollars of our money being used to subsidise it. You think about it, if you're someone who loves the latest and greatest technology, or the brand new movies coming out on Netflix or at the movies, you're going to pay whatever they're asking to go and see that movie. Or if it's the latest HD, TV, OLED, 4K, and this, that, and the other, you'll pay the $3,000 or $4,000 for that TV, maybe even more depending on the size, even though you know in 6 months' time that TV will be much cheaper. But you're an early adopter, you want to get hold of it, so you do. So if the scenario was the same when it came to renewables, and that we were so hell-bent on getting hold of this technology because, well, the sun doesn't set an invoice, the wind doesn't set an invoice, well, why would there not be companies lining up to invest in this stuff without the need for exorbitant billions of dollars of taxpayer subsidies? Well, the reality is because at the moment the economics don't stack up. That's why. And isn't it interesting? Because we saw recently when the New South Wales government extended the lifespan of Eraring, they were effectively going into a partnership with Origin Energy to say, look, we'll sort of underwrite this to an extent because we get the fact that there's ongoing maintenance, you might run a loss as a result, and therefore we'll sort of be there as a matter of last resort. They got a year or so into that arrangement, and what's Origin done? They've said, thank you, mother, for the rabbits, we'll go on our own from here on in. So they see the benefits in terms of their own business model in now extending the lifespan of Eraring without the backing of government support, which tells you that baseload power generated by coal is still enormously viable, it's still enormously required, and will be for some time to come. And any economy that's tried to move away from it dramatically, as say with Germany, we've seen what a dire outcome that has produced. And aside from that, even if we were to suddenly say tomorrow, yes, we all agree with Chris Bowen, he was right, we were all wrong, we'll move away from coal tomorrow, we've still got member producers who are all happily exporting both thermal and metallurgical coal for decades to come, as the demand remains. And so these are things we can't lose sight of. In the rush from Greens and Teals and others to say, right, no new coal and gas projects, no extension of existing coal and gas projects, what they are saying is that we want to put thousands of Australians in coal mining communities earning very good money, many of them earning six-figure salaries. We want to put them out of work as soon as we possibly can. Oh, and we'll transition them to what? Squeegeeing a solar panel, mowing the lawn around a wind farm, shooing a few black snakes away? Are you serious? There might be some jobs in construction of these projects, but once they're built, there's two men or women and a dog. You've got a contractor going from wind turbine to wind turbine. You might have someone squeegeeing the odd solar panel or potentially replacing them after 10 years, or if there's a bad hailstorm, then there might be some serious work to be done. But otherwise, they're basically running themselves. You haven't got 300 people, men and women, on swing shifts, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks of the year, working around the clock as you do in a coal mine. And certainly not earning the sort of money many of those men and women earn. And even the unions are wise to this now. That they've woken up to the fact that it's very easy to talk about, well, transition away to some other jobs. And there was a post-mine land use, an upper house inquiry in the New South Wales Parliament at the end of last year. And it highlighted there very clearly, well, yes, there might be some jobs into the future, but they certainly won't be the well-paying jobs around the clock that we currently see generated by the coal mining sector. So I would say be very, very careful what you wish for. Be very careful. Because the transition to renewables can sound wonderful, a move away from coal mining can sound terrific to some, but we are sleepwalking towards economic oblivion if we think that somehow that is the light and the future for this country. You don't simply second largest export earner tomorrow and assume that all will be well. What would happen to billions of dollars of royalties? You look at both the New South Wales and Queensland governments. When you talk about the sort of income generating capacity they have, obviously the biggest single line item is their allocation of GST every year. Beyond that, they might have some gaming taxes, they've got stamp duty. The big one in both New South Wales and Queensland are coal mining royalties, or royalties more generally from resources, the bulk of which, of course, are generated by coal. You know, you see now with the move towards critical minerals, and that's great. We encourage all forms of mining, although we only represent the pure coal players. But the reality is, even as we move towards more and more critical minerals mining, which is great, they will not generate anywhere near the sorts of royalties generated by coal. They simply won't. Billions and billions of dollars that are available for schools, roads, hospitals, ambulance drivers, hospital workers, teachers, you name it, all being bankrolled year in, year out by coal. Now you suddenly take a line item of somewhere between, depending on the regime, obviously Queensland, where I am tonight, far more punitive, but in New South Wales, still they're getting their fair cop, could be anywhere between maybe $3 and $8 billion every year. You take that out of the state government's budget, you're going to hear about it. You think about the arguments over GST allocation, they lose $1 billion from the state budget, and they squeal like there's no tomorrow. So imagine if all of a sudden we were cutting off billions of dollars in coal mining royalty revenue tomorrow. Again, what do the Greens or the Teals say to that? How do they plug that gap? It is absolute nonsense. And it was interesting today to see the Greens running a campaign even in Tanya Plibert's seat of Sydney, arguing that she's approved 26 coal and gas projects over the last 3 years. Guess what? They stacked up environmentally, they stacked up on water, they stacked up on noise, they stacked up on dust, they stacked up on every other benchmark they have to satisfy to get a planned approval, whether it be in New South Wales or Queensland, and then they stacked up at a Commonwealth level, and shock horror, they were approved according to law. What can be so egregious about that? I mean, it's interesting because we've seen in recent times talks from some of the banks and others that, oh, well, there's ESG concerns around investing in coal. I would say to those people, is there a sector that is more heavily regulated? A sector that is accountable every single day, whether it's in terms of environment protection authorities through noise and dust and other forms of emissions, whether it was resources regulators in the relevant states, whether it was work health and safety, whether it was any number of other compliance checks that are being done potentially every single day, you would find it hard to stack up another sector that was under more scrutiny and the subject of more compliance. And yet here we are being told that somehow there are ESG concerns around coal mining. You're cracking jokes. I mean, to me it just highlights these people have no understanding as to what is involved in coal mining. To imagine whether it was underground or above ground, and particularly say in the New South Wales Hunter, where you can be a kilometre or two from major townships like Muswellbrook. You think you can get away with Rafferty's rules in an area like that? Again, they have absolutely no idea. Many of these people would struggle to have been able to get 5 kilometres out of the CBD. They simply wouldn't have a clue. Adam Band, as far as he's gone, is some inner city nightclub in Melbourne where he can hit the decks at 11 o'clock at night DJing for a few fellow travellers. As if somehow that is the answer to our political woes. That somehow that's going to drive down the cost of living. Have a look at the scenario in Germany. I know Ben and others have spoken about this previously. The scenario in Germany is diabolical. Why would we want to give up competitive advantages? We have competitive advantages when it comes to tourism, competitive advantages when it comes to tertiary education, competitive advantages when it comes to agriculture and food production, and we have competitive advantages when it comes to resources. Why on earth would we want to see those advantages? To me, it simply makes no sense at all. The good news is that off the back of the fine work done by Nick Jorce, our chairman, in establishing Coal Australia, and now me working in lockstep with him, our board members, our producer companies and our associate members, we are now very forward-leaning with both the major parties in terms of the importance of coal, the role it plays in coal mining communities, the prosperity it drives, the taxes it pays, the infrastructure it funds, and importantly, the export revenue it generates. We are out there every single day advocating the case in a way that needs to be done, and that's why we are unashamedly about coal. That's why coal is in our name. We represent pure coal players like Whitehaven, Yancoal, Peabody, New Hope, Bowen and many others, and we are very, very proud and grateful that they put their trust in a relatively new body to say, look, we think it's great if someone is there prepared to advocate on our behalf. We don't necessarily have to be sticking our heads up every single day, but I will. That's the role I signed on for. That's why I'm here tonight talking to you. That's why I'm in Canberra talking to all sides of politics. Probably not the Greens and the Teals, but certainly the Liberals, the Nationals, the Labor Party, to say, let's just steady on here. It might be well and good for Chris Bowen to run around completely contrary to what the views of his own electorate would be, running some sort of agenda and feeding some political narrative that coal-fired power is in the rearview mirror, when it's still the baseload power that we generate today and will be for some time to come. But we are unashamedly proud of the work done by those coal mining communities. I couldn't be prouder of the work we're doing with Coal Australia, the work we do from an advocacy viewpoint as well as policy and other things. Obviously, a major debate in Queensland over the royalty regime that was bequeathed to this government by the previous government, and those discussions continue to play out. Because the good news is we have a strong, vibrant coal mining sector. We have demand from near neighbours that goes decades into the future. We have the technical know-how, the expertise, the men and women working in these roles, and importantly, we have the asset in the ground, the raw material, the resource that is coal. And so whatever that demand is there, we will continue to advocate on support and on behalf of members, the people they employ, the coal mining communities that they sustain. And that is a very, very important thing, the reason for being, as far as I see, with Coal Australia. And we've said very clearly, we will support those who support us. So if you support coal, you support the importance of coal for steel manufacturing, the role coal plays in generating baseload power. It's a pretty simple compact. You support those things, Coal Australia supports you. Well, I'll give you the email address now so that anyone else has got it. It's simply Stuart, Stuart, at Coal Australia, all one word, .com. And I'll repeat it at the end for anyone who's missed it. That's the email address, Stuart at coalaustralia.com. Yes, sir, thank you.
Look, just two quick questions. Once eventually, if we get on board like the rest of the world and realise that CO2 is the gas of life, and the whole planet needs it dramatically, in fact we've green by more than 14.3%. If we actually get there, is there two things? Is there any life for brown coal again? And the second question is, can you get the Queensland government to reduce their 40% tariffs on the coal-fired power stations that we own, the 5.5 that we own, so we're not the third most expensive electricity in Australia?
Well, they're both good questions. I'll probably answer the second one first. Certainly we've got a battle on the royalties front with the Queensland Government as much as we have around tariffs on the coal-fired power generators, which are state-owned still, unlike those in other states. What I can tell you is there are ongoing discussions with the Queensland Treasurer, David Janetsky, and a number of other people within the Queensland Government in relation to a whole range of questions around energy policy and importantly around coal mining royalties as well. And those discussions are continuing. Obviously, some of these things have been bequeathed to them by the previous government. They've got to now decide how they will forge their own future as the new government. Having worked in government myself, you can only blame previous administrations for so long. So they're going to have to come to some of those decisions. We're providing some background information to assist them. In terms of, I think that will always be a more difficult argument. There is a lot of work being done with van technology, ventilation and methane. There's obviously a lot of work being done with carbon capture and storage as well, and certainly newer coal-fired power stations. A number of those can potentially include carbon capture and storage, which might make brown coal feasible, but frankly, I think it's more the future is black thermal coal and metallurgical coal. We've seen the situation in Victoria. The costs are going up exponentially in terms of brown coal. So I think notwithstanding the potential for additional technologies, and there are some very good abatement technologies coming on, obviously New South Wales and Queensland show the way forward where black coal certainly is in much greater demand than brown coal.
Any other questions?
I might do a very quick vote of thanks to Stuart at this point. So we've only got 10 minutes minus period. So thanks very much indeed, Stuart. That's a wonderful presentation. I'm recommending to everyone here, join up with Coal Australia. They follow what you're doing. I wish you every success going forward, particularly in the Illawarra and the Hunter electorates, and I know you're pursuing. I'd like to say that their motto, and we had, those who remember our Christmas party could remember this in Coal Australia t-shirts, we built this city on rocks and coal. Right? It's the theme song. We actually sang it. We sang it badly at the party.
Don't ask me to sing it.
And I noted that the candidate representing coal in the Illawarra used that as a theme song this morning.
That's right, Amanda. Yes. That's right, Amanda Ibanez, and she actually works at Peabody. She's in HR with Peabody, so she's contesting coming in. Look, they've been great sessions. We had an event in Singleton a couple of weeks back where we had a Meet the Candidates forum for both Patterson and Hunter, and then a week or so back we were in Shell Harbour where we had a Meet the Candidates forum for the seats of Cunningham and Whitlam. And then this coming Wednesday, I'll be in Rockhampton. We've got a Meet the Candidates forum in Rockhampton on Wednesday night, which covers, of course, the seat of Capricornia and is very much coal mining central in Queensland.
Right, that's terrific. So for everyone, give a round of big goals. Okay. Thanks
Well, so thank you very much. I appreciate your time tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stuart.
That's a pleasure, and as I say, that email, if you want to reach out, Stuart@coalaustralia.com. Appreciate your time. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.